Hey there, I am Vivian Howard. I'm the chef at Chef and the Farmer in Kinston, North Carolina, and I have a new book out called This Will Make It Taste Good, and I'm here to talk to y'all today about a Thanksgiving classic, string bean casserole, green bean casserole, whatever you call it. I'm also here to talk to you about how this book and one of the stars of it can make your green bean casserole really special. So This Will Make It Taste Good is my latest book, and there are 10 chapters in it. Every chapter is about something I call a flavor hero or a building block. They're simple recipes within themselves that I add to all the food I cook to make simple things really exciting. And Community Organizer is one of my favorites in the book. It's basically tomatoes, onions, peppers, garlic, brown sugar, and vinegar simmered together to make a flavor base for things like soups or stews or beans or green bean casserole, if you will. So I think you all have my book. So what I'm asking you to do on the Monday before Thanksgiving is to make this community organizer and use it to make Thanksgiving more simple to cook and more exciting to eat. And not to mention, make the leftovers something that possibly outshines the main event. Okay, so green bean casserole. I'm guessing that most of you, when you make this American classic, you call on a can of cream of mushroom or a can of cream of onion. And I'm not hating on that by any stretch of the imagination. But I am here to show you how simple it is to kind of forego the can and do something from scratch that really is not much harder. So I have rendered some bacon here, and what happens when you render bacon? You get bacon fat, which is a really good reason to cook bacon. So in my pan, I have all the residual fat that rendered off the bacon, and I'm gonna use that to make a little roux. A roux is the thing that is going to thicken my casserole and make it creamy. A roux is also, shocker, the base for all the gravies that we make in the South. And what it is quite literally is equal parts fat and flour. In this case, our fat is gonna be bacon fat, and I have regular old flour right here, and I'm gonna add the flour to the fat and start whisking it around, making sure that it gets incorporated into all that bacon fat. And you also want to make sure that you're scraping up any of the little meaty bits that have clung to the bottom of the pan, because that's where the flavor is. So this is not only a primer on how to make green bean casserole from scratch, but it's also a primer on how to make that gravy that seems to trouble people so much around the holidays. So you can see how the flour and the bacon fat are bubbling up together. Now, we're not trying to go all Cajun and get a dark roux. We're just trying to cook the raw flour taste out of the flour. Okay, so I've got some nice little bubbles. And now I'm gonna add the liquid that is going to be thickened by the roux. And so this is just milk. And it's gonna come in here and latch on to the roux and thicken things up, just like that can of cream of mushroom soup. But the nice thing about doing it yourself and making your own cream of whatever is that you can add the flavors that you want, and it'll actually come out tasting like something. And in this case, we are going to add Community Organizer. So Community Organizer, all of the heroes in the book have these really fun names like Little Green Dress, Sweet Potential, Can Do Kraut. And the names are, more than anything, meant to explain how they function or how you're going to feel about them. And so community organizer relates to how this particular thing functions. You know, I think it brings the best out in the ingredients that it shares the stage with. It doesn't like demand to be the star. It's very much background. It adds body, it adds brightness, it adds acidity, and in some cases it adds a little sweetness. All right, you see how this is getting nice and thick? And right now I only have the flavors of bacon and flour and milk in here. I'm gonna add some salt. And then I'm gonna stir in the community organizer, which is gonna make this probably the most exciting green bean casserole you've ever made. All right. All right, so I've got about 2 cups of this in here. This is related to a sofrito. So sofrito is one of the pillars of Spanish cuisine. You'll find it as the base of all kinds of sauces and soups everywhere that they speak Spanish. And this is a riff on that with some southern touches, in that I call on vinegar to make it bright and brown sugar to give it that sweet kind of depth that I think we as Southerners really look for in a lot of our comfort food. Okay, so you see you've got this really beautiful, thick, gravy-esque style thing, and now I'm just gonna fold in some frozen green beans. And I know you can't believe that Vivian Howard is suggesting you do such a thing, but guess what? Frozen green beans are gonna be just as good as any green bean you buy in the grocery store right now. And they're already blanched, and they're easy to deal with. And so why not take a shortcut every now and then? That's one of the things that I am really adamant about in this book, is showing you that, one, I don't take myself that seriously in the kitchen, and two, you know, there are a lot of things that we can do to cook smarter and not harder. So while this is not beautiful, it is shaping up to be quite tasty. Now you'll notice that I'm doing this in a skillet. That's intentional. You know, I think generally we see our green bean casseroles in a baking dish, and that's totally fine. But I find that around the holidays, when we're doing a lot of cooking, my casserole dishes are hard to come by. And so because I needed to start this in a skillet anyway, I decided just to take it all the way in that skillet. Because guess what else I don't like? Washing dishes. So I'm gonna stir in a little bit of smoked Gouda cheese. You could use Swiss, provolone, Monterey Jack, whatever you want. The idea is I'm just gonna make it a little bit richer and a little bit creamier. Okay, so I've got my oven preheated to 350, and I've been waiting since I started to tell you about the topping for this casserole, which I'm incredibly excited about. I don't know about y'all, but one of my most poignant Thanksgiving memories is of taking the Pepperidge Farm seasoned breadcrumbs and crumbling them into my mom's casserole dish, and then crumbling saltines into the same dish, and then putting her raw onion and raw celery, no, I did not learn to cook from my mom, in that dish, and pouring broth on top of it. So I'm not gonna do that at my Thanksgiving. But for whatever reason, when I passed these in the grocery store, it pulled on my heartstrings. And so I thought, why not make this the topping for this green bean casserole? Because everybody's got a memory of this around Thanksgiving, and so why not pay homage to it? So what I'm doing here is putting this in a bowl. These are the classic stuffing, herb seasoned, in case you're wondering. And then I'm gonna pour bacon fat, if I had any left from rendering the bacon, or butter over top. And I'm just gonna toss these together. And I'm just gonna sprinkle them on top of my casserole before I put it in the oven. The other benefit to making this in the skillet is that everything is basically warm at this point, and what would have taken me an hour probably to bake a traditional out of the can green bean casserole, this will take me about 20 minutes in the oven, and everything will be just as hot. My topping will be browned and crispy, and you've saved yourself several dishes to wash. You've saved yourself some time. You've spared the earth a can of aluminum, and you've made community organizer. All right, voila. So you can see that this all browned and bubbled up, and then I'm gonna take that bacon that I rendered that is at the very, base of this. It's the first thing we started with, and I'm gonna crumble the bacon on top. And you've got a green bean casserole here that is probably gonna outshine the stuffing or the dressing, whatever you want to call it. All right, thank y'all so much for watching. I hope that you all make some community organizer and use it all throughout your Thanksgiving meal and the day after. Community organizer mixed with mayonnaise on a turkey sandwich is a good thing. Also, community organizer stirred into turkey soup is a very good thing. So I hope that y'all enjoy this book. If you're looking for consumable gifts to give as holiday gifts or hostess gifts, all of the heroes in here make great gifts that anyone would be so happy to get. So I hope you all enjoy. This will make it taste good, and I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks so much for sitting down with us. I think the last time that I was down here was for our Thanksgiving shoot last year. And I remember you talking about, I think maybe it was with the shrimp cocktail, how you were thinking about this book that was about how people would actually cook. And now here we are and you actually have the book.
I know, it's been a long year since then.
A long year since then, yeah. Well, I guess my first question is kind of what inspired you to create the book, and if you can talk a little bit about how it's different from your other book.
Sure. So after Deep Run Roots came out, for an entire year, I woke up every morning. The first thing I did was read all the new Amazon reviews on the book. And one of the trends that I saw was that people wanted more simple recipes. And so I was bound and determined to write a simple cookbook. And I started developing the recipes and laying out the table of contents, and I was just so bored. Because they were fine, but there was nothing that spoke to really the way that I cook in there.
Right.
And at the end of that table of contents, there was a chapter called This Will Make It Taste Good.
Yeah.
And it was a chapter about all of these flavor heroes or building blocks that I was arguing, if you make these things and then add them to the stuff up here, all this simple stuff, it'll be really exciting.
Yeah.
And then I thought, this is so stupid. why don't I just write a book about those things and
Yeah.
flip that idea on its head?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the way that I cook at home. It's informed by the way that I've always cooked at the restaurant. I think that most chefs like have this pantry of like weapons, if you will, or a recipe arsenal of things that they pull from to make, you know, really simple ingredients shine.
Right.
And I think inside that pantry is where you find a chef's voice and their character as
Yeah.
a cook. And so when I stopped cooking at the restaurant so much after the show started and started cooking at home more, I found that I was going to the restaurant to steal all of these little heroes so that I could cook dinner in a timely fashion
Right.
at home.
Well, because dinner with kids and family is different than cooking at a restaurant. you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I like being in the kitchen at home, but I want it to be like beginning, middle, and done,
Right.
and short. And
Right.
I don't like to wash dishes, and so I'm very much about like one pot or one sheet pan
Yeah.
things, and all the little flavor heroes allow me to be able to accomplish all those things.
Yeah. And do you make a lot of them in advance and then just kind of incorporate them over the course of the week?
Yeah. So I mean, I recommend that people like, you know, pick two. And on a Sunday, when you might be like grilling chicken to reheat on
Yeah.
a Wednesday, instead of doing that kind of meal prep, like pick two of these and make them, and then see how easy your week's worth of cooking is.
Yeah. Are there certain things that like your kids respond to the most that they kind of ask you to make again? Are there any?
Yeah,
favorites?
I mean, they're not privy to everything that goes into things,
Right,
but anything
right.
with, you know, beef or cheese, they're big fans of. The community organizer is, I think, a great gateway
Yeah.
hero, and I use it, you know, in pots of beans. I make a broccoli and cheese soup that my kids love. And so it's definitely very family friendly.
Yeah. Well, and I like how in the recipe you say, okay, I use this kind of sugar, but you can use any type of sugar. I use this kind of vinegar. Like, to me, it speaks to how I cook or how my mom cooks, which is like you sub out what you need to.
Yes, I mean, I think that as chefs and cookbook authors, we've really done people a disservice by saying you have to get red wine vinegar or you have
Right.
to have rice wine vinegar. Like,
Yeah.
you need vinegar.
Yeah.
And there are so many things that can be swapped in and out for like not a lot of difference in the end product. So
Right.
this book is really about making you empowered to do those types of things, to
Yeah.
make those kinds of decisions, because it's really not that complicated.
Right. Well, and I think if you're someone who's used to picking up a cookbook and cooking a recipe, you're not learning how to cook. you
Right,
know?
you're not looking at that recipe for the things that it can lend you all throughout, you know, the meals that you cook.
Yeah. Are there any of them that you use specifically around the holidays that are kind of part of your holiday meals?
Well, there's definitely ones that lend themselves more to like fall and winter flavors.
Yeah.
You know, like the community organizer. It's like a Southern style sofrito that's cooked down and, you know, makes things heartier,
Yeah.
brings things together. So it's great in stews and beans and that sort of thing. These nuts, which are basically spiced pecans that I chop up and use in, you know, pies and smoothies and pestos, they speak to fall
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But then, you know, others like the herbaceous, which is kind of like garlic confit and basil, get blended together to make a smooth, creamy, pesto-ish style thing. That really speaks to summer to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the pickle popsicles.
Yes, the kraut is something that I definitely, there's a chapter called Can Do Kraut, and it's about, you all can make kraut, I promise you. It's very easy, and it's a really important ingredient in my kitchen because it adds texture and acid, and it's a probiotic, and I hide it in all kinds of things for my kids. There's something about that briny
Salty
element.
thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very thirst quenching.
Yeah.
Particularly when it's frozen.
Well, I think sometimes we don't give our kids enough credit to like things that have more sophisticated flavors because it's easy to be like, oh, they're going to like mac and cheese. We'll just throw it on the table. But sometimes they love these things that are a little more sophisticated.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah. I feel like there are some different sorts of ingredients in your flavor heroes that people might not have encountered in Deep Run Roots, like seaweed and sesame seeds, like things that are not like kind of North Carolina-ish. Like, do you feel like your influences are really just global in terms of how you cook?
Yeah, I mean, I'm known for cooking like, regional Southern food, and I wrote, a tome to
a very big, heavy book
to the food of this place. But like, that's not really what I cook every day. I mean, there are things in there that I do for sure, but I'm a student of food across the world.
Right.
And I live in a rural place, and I often find that one of the downsides of living in rural Eastern North Carolina is that my children have very few opportunities, natural opportunities for diversity.
Right.
And so, it's through foods and cookbooks that I often introduce them to the fact that they're not the center of the universe.
It's a good lesson to learn early, I guess.
Yeah, but you're speaking about the chapter called Quirky Furky, which is a riff on furikake, which is a traditional Japanese rice seasoning.
Yeah.
And that is really the only chapter in the book that you can't find every single ingredient at your local Walmart.
Right.
Because I really wanted this to be very accessible and approachable.
Yeah.
And actually, you can buy all the ingredients for Quirky Furky at my local Walmart, believe it or not.
To me, your book feels so timely with the quarantine. Obviously, you started working on this way before, but do you feel like it's really speaking to the way that people are cooking now, which is maybe different than they were cooking a year ago?
Yeah, well, we're cooking now.
all the time.
And when the pandemic, in the beginning stages of the pandemic, I was just finishing up the book, and I was like, God, I wish this were out in the world right now, because, I was just watching people cook on Instagram and look for inspiration and look for ways to, shortcuts to make things, exciting. And I think that this book is perfect for this time. I think I've read a lot of articles throughout the pandemic about cooking with condiments.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what I'm trying to get you to do, is like make this simple condiment and then use it across all the meals that you cook.
Yeah.
Another reason I think the book is timely is that it's so lighthearted and fun and creative. It's like a world within a world. I'm sitting here saying these crazy names like Can-Do Kraut or Quirky Furky or V's Nuts.
Yeah.
And, there's no one's ever really written a cookbook like this.
Right.
In that, like, all of the condiments have, I've given them names and personalities that really speak to what they do.
Right.
And so I would say that reading this book is almost like an escape.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the same as sitting and meal planning and kind of trudging through your grocery list type thing.
No, it's there's a lot of humor and a lot of matter of fact narrative. That's one of the ways that it is similar to Deep Run Roots, is that Deep Run Roots is full of stories, and this book is as well. Instead of being about Eastern North Carolina and our history, they're really stories about me and my life. And in this book, I write about the fact that I always get the question of how do you balance it all?
Right.
And, I don't balance it.
Yeah.
And the story speaks to that. And another one of the stories in the book is about being a working mom, or just being a mom who maybe doesn't feel as if she fits all the boxes that you check, or that my mom checked, growing up, and just kind of how I deal with that.
Right. Yeah, which is interesting. Which makes me think about traditions and the holidays coming up. Like, are you going to throw an enormous Thanksgiving feast? Are you kind of counting it down? Like, what do you?
It's like, I feel like we've been talking about Thanksgiving for 3 months now, because we all want something to look forward to.
Yeah.
But I will likely have a medium-sized event.
Well, and your family's close too, so it's not like you're.
Well, we've all been around each other this whole time anyway, so it makes a lot of sense to celebrate together since we can.
Yeah. Since you have been together, is there anything you're going to do to elevate Thanksgiving meals or Christmas meals to make them feel more like moments?
Well, I think we're going to go super traditional.
Yeah.
I think that, things have been so uncertain and weird. Like, I just want to clench down on something that's familiar.
Yeah.
And, in the past, I've been known to do a Szechuan feast for Thanksgiving.
I remember you talking about that last year, that you would do kind of themed stuff.
But this year, I think I really, I want it to be something that screams Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's the Thanksgiving that my kids remember as what Thanksgiving is.
Establishing those traditions is huge this year. Have you had any holiday disasters, Thanksgiving disasters that are worth sharing?
I have disasters in a lot of different areas of my life, but generally not in the kitchen. Because, I think
because you're a professional?
Well, yeah, because it's what you learn, cooking in a restaurant, is how to fix stuff.
Right. Well, and I feel like with Thanksgiving, timing is the key, and I feel like as a chef, I'm sure you mastered that.
Well, I think it's all about the plan.
Yeah.
And making sure that you try not to do everything the day of.
Right.
And I think you can fix any disaster with a cheese plate. My family always shows up and just wants to sit down and eat.
Yeah.
And that has always bothered me because I want them to come in and mingle and have snacks. And so I have learned over the years that if I put out a nice cheese and charcuterie board, if dinner is delayed an hour and a half or 2 hours, as long as there's something for people to eat, they're fine.
Yeah.
And that's something you can actually assemble the day before.
Yeah. And
bring out. And the beautiful thing about it is that, cheese and charcuterie is really better at room temperature. So.
Yeah. I did want to ask you, when you were talking about at the beginning of the quarantine and looking for recipes, if I'm going to do my preparedness shopping, what should I stock in my pantry right now that's not minestrone soup and chili and beans and whatever?
I'm a big believer in always having a head of cabbage in the refrigerator. Always having a head of broccoli. I buy the same few things every time I go to the grocery store. It's not exciting, but I always buy a couple onions, a couple sweet potatoes, a couple white potatoes, ground turkey, a whole chicken. I'm a big believer in a whole chicken.
Interesting, because some people find that whole chicken hard to cook.
There's, I would say, 10 recipes in this book that speak to cooking chicken and cooking chicken on top of something so that you don't have to, so that's your meal.
Right.
I buy a lot of mayonnaise because, and as a result, I have a lot of mayonnaise. It's I might not have mayonnaise. And so I buy mayonnaise.
Heaven forbid you run out of mayonnaise.
8 jars of mayonnaise. But you don't want to get caught in a pandemic without some mayonnaise.
Right.
But I think that the whole stocking your pantry thing for me is really about having, a variety of vinegars, enough salt, an olive oil that I like, and an olive oil that I will apply heat to.
Yeah.
And so it's less about the dried minestrone mix,
right,
and more about the things that make the basic ingredients come together.
The things that make things taste good. Well, that wove itself back in pretty nicely.
Yeah.
So why did you choose to make the community organizer with us today?
Well, I think that, as I said, it's a great thing going into fall and winter because it brings ingredients together and gives them a long cooked flavor. I think that it lends itself to Thanksgiving extremely well because Thanksgiving's got a lot of heavy, robust flavors, and the community organizer is essentially a blend of tomatoes, peppers, vinegar, brown sugar, garlic, all stewed together. And so anything you add it to, it's going to add some brightness and some levity. Yeah. And I feel like we're always looking for that on the Thanksgiving table.
Yeah.
And we often find it in a can of cranberry sauce.
Yeah.
And so the community organizer, I think, is just really versatile. both for Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving leftovers. You know, I see a lot of turkey sandwiches, and I love to take the community organizer and use equal parts of it and mayonnaise. Again, if you need any mayonnaise, come to my house. And that's great on a turkey sandwich. If you make turkey soup, I love to add community organizer to any number of soups to give it depth and body and acid. You know, I talk about acid a lot, but so I just think it's a good gateway hero and something that people can use at this moment and all throughout the winter.
Nice. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I'm excited to share some of these recipes from your new book with all of our readers as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.